Welcome to Two Finger Tuesday, a production of the James McGee Show. Conversations are just easier had over a good old two finger. So pour yourself a glass of your favorite booze and join your host, James McGee, for a drink and some real talk.
We are live. Welcome back to the James McGee Show, Two Finger Tuesday. I am your host. I am James McGee, and as usual, our co-hosts, Joe Collins and Tom Wells. And by how you can tell by my hat, it is the 4th of July special. So we're going to start off by talking about, of course, like we do every Tuesday, about what we drink, what we're drinking. Then we're going to go into what America means to us. And I've been looking forward to this all week. So, Tommy, what you drinking?
Tonight I have a very special drink for a very special occasion. I am drinking, and you'll understand as soon as I show you the bottle.
Oh, always outdoing us, Tommy.
Casey
no,
Jones.
I got y'all tonight, I think, but y'all always outdoing us.
And why do I have a bottle of Casey Jones Barrel Cut tonight? Because I have reached the pinnacle of my dream. Since I've been 11 years old, I am now a full-time professional railroad employee.
Cheers to that. We are so
Thank
happy
you.
for you and so proud of you. And that is, that's a huge accomplishment. We know how much that means to you. And
It means it does.
like
I've
I
always
said
felt
last
like
week, that company's a very lucky company to have you. And I'm glad they were wise enough to not only keep you, but to advance you. And that is amazing.
Elevated status, baby.
Yep.
Nice. Thank you very much. Yeah, today was the first day of being owned by the new company, and that they got a birthday present because it's my birthday tomorrow. So they got a birthday present day early, and so did I.
Well, cheers to that company and cheers to your birthday. We'll do a birthday toast at the end, though.
All right, sounds good.
All right, Joe Collins.
Here's the North Fork and Way right there, buddy. So here's what I'm drinking. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot of color to that.
No, you drinking vodka? Let me hold on. Let me get my glasses out.
You're not going to be able to read that anyway.
Oh, so yeah. That must be vodka.
And it's one of the reasons that we're going to talk about why I love America.
Okay.
That was a gifted bottle of Montenegrin grappa. The last time I was in Montenegro visiting our classmate, Donnie.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I'm having that today. It's a very special bottle to me, very special meaning. I had several evenings that I shared grappa with his family and his father, who actually makes grappa. And but we're going to talk about why we love America, and that's one of the things I'm going to talk about in that story. So, over to you, James McGee. What are you drinking?
So, I am drinking bourbon Kentucky Owl Confiscated, which is a really good bourbon. The reason why I chose this, and I'm telling you, I spent a little time in my bar looking, and I finally decided on this one. So it is obviously a Kentucky bourbon, and it's distilled there, but it is bottled at the Bayou Rum Distillery. The same company owns it, which is in my area, which is 10 miles from my house, and which I've drank the rum, and I've talked about that. But they're a good company. They're local. So when I'm thinking about America, I'm thinking about this whiskey and we are a land of that. Somebody wants to open a distillery. The distillery was bought by a big company, but it was started 10 years ago by a group of local guys I went to school with. And they want to open a distillery, and they did, because this is America, and you can fucking do what you want. We're a capitalist society, and you want to open a distillery, you open a distillery. So that's why what I'm drinking. So let's do a toast tonight for America, a good America toast, and then we'll
toast to America.
Toast to America. We'll talk about what America means to us. So, Tommy, you want to start us off on that?
Well, I think I'm going to start off by telling a story about when I was a young kid, and I'm going to plug my phone in here real quick because maybe that's the problem. I'm the one with all the technical difficulties always. There we go. So one of the reasons why I appreciate our country so much, when I was a youngster, I have family that lives in Germany. And I think I've talked about this on a previous occasion. My mom came from Germany after World War II. And as a 10-year-old child, I visited Germany, and we went over there several times to visit my grandmother. And we took some trips into this place called the Harz Mountains, which was right on the border between East and West Germany. And there were guard towers and no man's land area, where they would basically, if somebody tried to escape from East Germany, they would shoot them. And my family was so fearful of that whole situation that we would never travel to Berlin because you had to travel through East Germany to get there. And my aunt was always afraid that somehow or another, because they were from what's now actually Poland, back then it was Germany, they were so afraid that somebody would pull some Rolodex out and be like, hey, you guys were from here and you're supposed to be on this side. And they would, take them basically and keep them from coming back to the free Western side. And I mean, those were real fears. And to see that and to, at such a young age, made such a huge impression on me. It made me really appreciate just how amazing just the concept of our country is, but how truly we must cherish freedom. And because when you see how other people have, live in the world, it's hard to even imagine.
Mm-hmm.
That is that is definitely on the money, Tommy. And you're right. You're 100% right. I mean, look what we just take that. I'm gonna cover that when I talk, but we just take that for granted. This country, So, Joe, what about you?
No, I'm just going to build on that. And the reason that I'm drinking the grappa today is one of the things. It's so funny because I was doing the same thing that you did this today. You were going to your bar and you're looking through options as to what the different things. And every time you did that, you had to be mindful of what you were looking at, and then you're mindful of what you chose. Choice and freedom, right? 100%. We have the freedom to choose. And like Tommy was saying, there's fear that you might have stepped across. You could have taken a one step too far, right, and been in trouble. And our friend Donnie from Montenegro, that was part of Yugoslavia. That area of the where he lives has been ruled by every dynasty throughout time, right? And they're a very, very young country, per se. And the freedom to be able to travel. And for you, Tom, to be able to do that, to go to Germany and experience that and to reflect on that is a very important thing. I do a fair bit of traveling in the U.S. I've been internationally, and it's just like there's not a lot of places that allow the ability to do what we do here.
Yes.
Because they've asked us, well, you can go from state to state without any issue and stuff. It's like, yeah.
Just like that.
And the same thing is that we can fly, and we're accepted to most countries in the world without any issues, and we can go there and we can experience it, and just the awe that people have when they talk about the United States and what they know about the U.S. when they're not from here. So Donnie's dad, I told you about that. He didn't speak a lick of English. He spoke Montenegrin and he spoke Albanian. And it was so funny one night, we were having grappa before we went out to dinner, and Donnie's wife started laughing. And it's like, well, what are you laughing about? Well, Donnie's dad thought that I would understand better if he switched from Montenegrin to Albanian and started talking to me in Albanian. And we just started laughing. But he was so enamored with the United States and the presidents and had all these questions that our second trip back, my wife and I actually brought him a hardbound book on all the United States presidents. And we were able to present that to him because he was so interested in that. And so just the ability to move and choose and be free to be able to do that is, it doesn't go without me being very mindful of that. So
that is, you just like Tom did, you hit that one really good. And I think that, again, this is our time. Every year, 4th of July is my favorite holiday, man. Every year, 4th of July, we get to be reminded of what this country is. That's what it should be is, we take life for granted, and that's just part of life, and it's just human nature. But you have those opportunities a couple times a year, Veterans Day, Memorial Day, Christmas to really reflect. Well, 4th of July is mine, is when I like to reflect and say, well, I'm gonna take this hat off because when I want people to see my eyes and see the passion that I have when I say this. Real simple. What America means to me is just last week on Thursday on this show, I criticized our sitting president of the United States after the debate. I thought that was it was an embarrassment. I think that the 25th Amendment should be invoked, and I voiced it very openly. And you know what happened? Nothing. I didn't get arrested. I didn't get shot. Nobody bombed my house. Nothing happened to me because I am free. The First Amendment is freedom of speech. Think about that. The first one allowed me to say what I want. Can you imagine? And Joe, you've done more traveling probably than Tom and I. You've been in a lot of countries. Can you imagine some of the countries, Joe, that you've been to? And somebody like me calling for the sitting president to be removed because feel like he's incompetent? They seriously, they'd cut my head off.
They'd lock you up, at least. Yeah.
Remember on a good day, I'd get locked up.
Yeah.
On a bad day, I'd get killed.
You never seen it. Remember when the Ukraine-Russia situation first popped up, and they were showing people in Russia, and they were all afraid to sit. They couldn't speak out against Russia because they were afraid they were going to be thrown in jail. I mean, it was.
Yeah. Well, that's what America means to me, and I've got one of my closest friends, and Joe, you've met him, Sam Homsey, that owns my favorite restaurant. Joe, you've been there with me a couple times. Until you talk to somebody, and Sam moved here, he came legally. He was here for probably 20 years before he became an American citizen. Did all the right way. And if you ever question what this country is really about, sit down and talk to somebody like him, who came here. That he is the American dream. Is a very successful business owner. Came here with nothing, didn't know anybody, and built. He's one of the most well-known and popular guys in our town because of the way that the business he's built and the way that he has treated people. And this man barely spoke English when he came. That's the American dream. And I have a I'm not anti-immigration, but I'm anti-illegal. Definitely what's going on the border is just, to me, is just unreal. But we can't ignore the fact, why are people trying to get here so bad? Because it is the greatest country in the world. And there's truly an American dream. But it's a dream unless you go make it a reality. It's there for you, man. It's there for the taking. You, just like I talked about my friends with this that opened this distillery. You want to open a distillery? You go do it.
Yep.
Nobody's telling you can't. That's just there. To me, there's nothing more special than that.
And another thing I think we need to point out too is when you look at the American soldier, what other country do people voluntarily go to protect the United States and our interests simply for the advancement of freedom? Think about that. People give up their lives so that freedom continues. And to me, that's one of the greatest gifts of all, is that people are willing to do that.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And I think that even this is, we're celebrating Independence Day. The only reason we have independence is a lot of people died to give us that.
Yeah, freedom isn't free.
Absolutely is not. So, but like I said, 4th of July is absolutely my favorite holiday. And I don't know exactly what we're doing Thursday for 4th of July. But if nothing
you come over to my house for a cookout.
Hey, don't ever count me out now, Tom Wells. You know I could just show up there with my red, white, and blue hat on. You don't doubt that.
Come on.
You see, though, he's got that trailer all hooked up. He thinks you're coming down the road. you might see the back end of it.
I'm driveway glamping.
Nice.
So I do want to, because this is something that's hot right now.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to talk about a officer-involved shooting that happened Friday night, about 10:15 in Utica. I'm assuming I'm pronouncing it right. Utica, New York, which is in upstate New York, about 50 miles from Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
I'll briefly give just a little bit of the facts of it. I talked a little bit about it yesterday. There'd been armed robberies recent. It was as recent as Thursday night, around the same time. Police stopped 2 males who fit the description. Go to pat them down. One of them takes off running. Very short foot pursuit. They tackle him. He brandishes a weapon. It's reported that he points the weapon at one of the officers, or at the officers. One of the officers fired one shot and went to the hospital, died at the hospital. Turned out to be a 13-year-old kid, and it turned out to be a pellet gun. But the gun was a replica of a Glock 17. Of course, it's 10:15 at night. That's just the facts, but I wanted to discuss it a little bit. It looks like it's calming down a little bit over there now that some of the facts I think they're doing a pretty good job of it. At first, it was a little iffy. The mayor, he made some statements I didn't really like, but looks like it's hard to really argue with. But there are some politicians that are jumping up and down. There's, the community's jumping up and down. First off, it's a tragic situation. 13-year-old is dead. And my thoughts, and I know y'all's too, thoughts and prayers go out to the family. But we've got to look at the facts. And I don't care if it was a replica, if it didn't even function, but if it's a pellet gun, these officers had a gun in their eyes, had a gun pointing at them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what is the facts are the facts. So, Tom, I don't know if you followed it any, but give me your thoughts on it.
Well, the bottom line, and again, I couldn't agree with you more. My heart goes out to the person's family, and especially goes out to the officers that were involved, because as well as I do, there's no police officer anywhere that, first of all, wants to use that level of force. We all, pray we never have to do that. But it's one of those situations where it's either your life or the person that's trying to take yours. And if somebody brandishes a gun, I'm sorry, that's the consequence. And I just feel horrible that that officer and that group of officers has to live with that, even though from all intents and purposes, it seems like a illegal shooting. They're still going to be torn up by that. And, I'm sorry to use an example from the railroad today, but it's the same exact thing. I was coming down the track with a 70-car train. I got a guy walking in front of me, walking with his back to me. I'm blowing the horn at him. He's got an umbrella over his head. He's protected from the sun, and he's not moving because he knows I'm not that close yet. I can't stop. So I start blowing the horn rapidly at him. And finally he turns around and gets off the right of way and goes into the bushes there as I go by. And then he looks at me like I'm the stupid one. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? You know what I mean? I either have the choice to stop way short and then go through all this rigmarole with the train, which again, that's nothing compared to what we're talking about. But it's about choices. And if somebody makes a choice like this person did up there in Utica, I'm sorry. If you pull a gun out while you're struggling with police officers, the odds are you're going to get shot. I mean, any reasonable and prudent person would agree with that statement. You do that, you're going to get it.
Joe, a couple things that come to my mind too is he's 10:15 at night. People are saying, oh, he's a kid. Well, okay, if he's a kid, why is he out at 10:15 at night, unsupervised on the streets? And why would he have this weapon? Very well could be the person who had been committing these armed robberies now that has not been proven, that has not been released. But there's a lot of questions here. We just can't look at a person's age, we have to look at the action as a whole. What are your feelings on that, Joe?
Well, absolutely. And I'm going to again reiterate the family. It's tragic. Prayers to them, but also what Tom said, that there are 3 officers involved in this. One that actually shot, that are second guessing themselves in the situation, probably because there's other people that are having the rhetoric that they are, right. And
Sure.
All 3 of us have been very high officials in the law enforcement, and just on the face of it, with the information that we have, it appears as though they did everything by the book, right? They identified people that they thought were potential suspects. They detained them before they were going to continue with any of their investigation. They asked if they could pat them down just to make sure that they were safe, right? And then one of them bolts. And what do? It's like, well, that's a sign of guilt, isn't it? So we need to talk to this guy for sure. They track him down, and then during that brief moment, and one of them actually verbalized that they identified the threat, right? Mm-hmm. They were yelling gun, and then he produced it, and he was fired upon. One time, it wasn't as though that they continued shooting, where may have even been justified.
That's a great point. I'm going to hit on that in a minute, but that's a great point. One shot.
Yeah. So what that shows is that all of the training of those police officers came to play that day in that situation, and it worked. And the knowledge, the lack thereof of the community. And here's a statement by the nephew's uncle. And he questioned why the police shot his nephew after he had been thrown to the ground. They could have used a stun. Why didn't they use a stun gun?
Not in the face of lethal force.
Stun gun versus lethal force. That's not the equation. We don't go a step down to try to remediate the thing. And when did he brandish the gun? When he was on the ground.
Yeah.
So you can't tell me, and you know this, is that, you know what? You can fight from any position. You don't have to be standing face to face, right? It's that
especially gunfighting,
and you bring out a gun when you're on the ground, guess what? You get the same result. So it's a tragic situation, like you said, but it looks though it was textbook. And the chief, they broke down all of the body camera video by frame
Good
to be able to analyze this thing, right?
I think the chief has done a good job. And I think the mayor is starting to do a good job, but I'm gonna tee off on something on both of them. I don't know whose decision it was to release the officer's name. I'll touch on that in a minute. Mm-hmm. But you said one shot. Now there were, what I believe, Joe, am I right, Tom? It was two officers on the scene, right?
Three.
Okay. We all 3 know it was very possible, and still end result would have been the same. It's very possible that this subject could have had 30 rounds in him. Mm-hmm. There's a scenario where shootings, that's what happens, is you can empty a clip. These officers had the discipline. The other 2 did not fire. How many other times have you seen, sympathy fire?
Sure.
It just triggers, somebody shoots and everybody else shoots. That didn't happen here. It showed me they're well-trained, well-disciplined, and we're doing their job. One shot is a fatal shot. One shot. That says a lot right there. That says it to me a lot right there. But I am very upset that by Saturday, these 3 officers' names were released. It is, to me, irresponsible, unnecessary, because like we have all talked before, we all agree that the public always says cops are treated different, and they should be treated the same as citizens, and I agree. But also agree that cops are treated differently in a different way than what most people think. Anybody else would have gotten a shooting unless they are charged with a crime. That name is not released. So why were those police officers' names released when they were not charged with a crime? That makes absolutely no sense. This is a town of 60,000 people with their families. They're probably well known. Their families are in danger. They're in danger and unnecessary because they owed the public, they owed the family, they owed anybody nothing when it comes to their names. And that is, to me, despicable. And I'm very upset about that.
And until that case was reviewed by the grand jury, those names should not have been released.
And Tom, in my opinion, if they're not charged, they should never be released.
Well, and I agree. I mean, we all know that
not formally charged or arrested, they should never be released.
Right.
But definitely, and I get it. By the time they go to grand jury, 6 months? Okay, so it's died down some, and the immediate, look how volatile it is right now. Yep. And you're going to release their names. You're going to add to it and put them. You're going to now look at it from a administrative standpoint as far as public safety and what you're trying to control. You've got demonstrations going on. Now all you've done is add to it. When you release the names, now you've got to take extra manpower and you got to put security on their families and on them. It just makes your job so much harder. And I think it was just unnecessary and irresponsible to do, whoever's decision that was.
Couldn't agree more.
Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that what probably has happened in this particular situation is they were trying to appease the community and the media rather than doing what was appropriate for that. They even I'm just kind of I have one of the articles from ABC up here, and it said during the interview at the scene with the supervisor, I'm not going to say the officer's name, he said that he was the only officer that fired his weapon. And he said he discharged one round straight toward the ground, according to his body cam footage, which that's what happened. So the suspect fired. Is it possible the suspect fired rounds at you? And they're asking questions that's part of the investigation.
Yeah,
that stuff shouldn't be in the news 3 days after the event, or 2 days.
No, absolutely.
3 days. Yeah.
Well, I'm here to tell you, not to interrupt you, Jim, but it's going to start taking some litigation on the part of police unions to make sure that doesn't happen, because that is absolutely wrong. You're right.
I'd like to get, Tom, I'd like to get Rich on here, and we get him. I want to get his opinion as being, high up in the FOP and very active. How do we stop that? How do we make that some sort of campaign? Because I think what happens is, I don't know when the last time that this agency had officer involved shooting. It's not a small agency, but it's a moderate size.
Right.
I don't know but what's their protocol? If you set the protocol right now, it says we do not release the name. You set it in your policy, it's done. And when the media comes to you, or the family or attorneys or whoever comes to you, you say, it is our policy that we do not release the names unless they're charged with a crime, just like every other citizen. Bam, it's done. It's done. So don't make those decisions. So here's my point to all administrators. Make that decision, put it in policy right now. Don't make that decision where you're getting your ass kicked. If you put in policy right now, then just resort to your policy.
Yep.
So I'm ready to go on some sort of campaign about that. I think I'm going to write I started writing it today. I think I'm going to write an open letter to police administrators on that campaign and why. And I'll tell you, I think, Joe, I know you were there. Tom, were you in St. Louis when in 16?
Yep.
So were y'all in John Belmore's presentation?
Yep.
Yes.
That was one of the biggest things that he said when they released, and I won't say his name here, even though it's well known, the officer from Ferguson. John Belmore stressed that and talked about what they went through because, and Steve Lewis talked about it. Steve Lewis had to, it was in the officer lived in his city. So they had to, do security for the family. They had to get them housed. They had to do so many things because they were outside their family. They were outside their house within 24 hours.
Yep.
And that's something that we've got to stop.
Right. I think another
important. You're right, Joe, because we're appeasing people. We don't have to appease them. Do your job.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Follow the law, follow your policies, do your job. Don't get out there and start appeasing people because you're going to lose, man. You're going to lose either way.
Yep.
That's not going to satisfy them.
I think it would be important to add in a message in that letter you were talking about how important it is not just to have the policy, but to already be training your administrators. You should never be asking questions like that at the scene. There should be just a very brief interview of just a real quick snapshot of what happened, and then there's no structured interview, no other questions beyond that until the officer has a chance to sit down and collect themselves. And some places do 24. I think it's recommended that it's 48 to 72 hours after the incident that the officer is interviewed. You have to have those things in place, because otherwise you're going to have people doing what this police supervisor did, which is totally inappropriate. You don't put people on the spot like that right after something like that happens.
Right. Well, and that's where I've said, do your research. If you don't deal with these on a regular basis, then you need to do your research, and you don't need to create something new. It's out there. Contact Force Science Research Institute. That's what, Dr. Lewinsky, he's the godfather of this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it's 2 full sleep cycles to be able to process this stuff and get it to where it needs to be. Right. It's, but again, let's talk about the elephant in the room, is that there's a lot of police administrators that are appointed to their position by very liberal politicians, and they're going to do what their bosses tell them that they're going to do. But like you said, James, as you get that policy in place the right way, then you don't have to deal with the politics after the fact.
You go back to your policy. You do it now. Do it before you have a shooting, and decide how you're going to handle these things. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the only way to go. And it's I'm as administrators, and y'all have all done this. I mean, how many times have you called somebody and said, "Hey, what do you think I should? How you think I should handle this?" You've done it before. Hey, I called. I've said this before. We had a officer involved shooting. It was getting a little. It was getting a little heated. It was a Lake Charles City policeman. It wasn't one of our deputies, but because it was them, and they were the target of the of the public, if we had any kind of demonstrations, our agency was going to handle it. And I was going to be the incident commander. So when I walked out the sheriff's office, I'm like, man, I better get it together. First thing I did was call Steve Lewis and say, can you get me in touch with John Belmore? Mm-hmm. And John Belmore spent an hour on the phone with me, getting me lined out on the do's and don'ts, because they went through it. So there are people, like you said, Joe, there's people that's been through it before. Reach out to them.
Right. No need to reinvent the wheel. No need to reinvent the wheel.
No.
Well, as I talk in a lot of the discussions that I do, and we do some leadership discussions, is you do not get promoted into a bigger seat by someone that believes you have all the answers. Your job is to know what you do and also understand what you don't, and then find the answers and find the people with the answers. And that's about building your network. It's all about the network.
And look, I get it. And both of y'all were in chief's job and assistant chiefs and high level at early stages in your career. But I can tell you right now, I don't know about y'all, and I'm out. I never want to. I'm good being out, and I don't want to get back in. But I can tell you that I wouldn't take a chief of police job in this country unless I didn't need it.
There it is.
Unless I could retire. Unless I was retired, like right now, like, okay, yeah, I could go be a chief if I get fired in 2 years because I didn't like something the mayor did or said and I disagreed with him, then I don't need it. When you're a young guy, look at these young chiefs, and I don't know this chief in Utica. I don't know. Seems like he's doing a pretty good job, but he might have young kids, man. He's trying to survive himself. I get that. I get that. But hey, like I was told before, you want to sit in the swivel seat, you got to fucking swivel, man. You got to get there. You're the one in the swivel chair. Start fucking swiveling.
Yeah, and bring him.
Look like he's doing a good job. I think the chief's doing a good job, and I think the mayor now is come around and like I said, he said some things I didn't like it at first, but I think he realized real quick that these officers were right.
Well, I'm going to use an analogy that Tom can understand. It's like, hey, if the train has left the station, it's harder to catch up to it.
You got that right.
And I think that the train left the station and the mayor was standing at the depot talking to the media.
Yep.
And by the time he turned around, the train
he
had
almost
left.
derailed the fucking train. He come close to derailing the fucking train too. So I think he got back. Somebody snatched him out real quick.
Yeah.
Thank God he's got John Henry as the police chief, pounding those spikes back in.
Yep. So in closing, let's go back to where we started. In closing, let's talk about America a little bit more, Joe.
Well, I'm purposely wearing stuff. So Lahaina Strong, I was able to be down there a number of times to help the folks there, like you said. And then the Honor Cafe is an amazing restaurant owned here in the Houston area by a former police officer, former special operations guy. I was able to have lunch there yesterday with some friends of mine. Just the freedom to be able to choose what we want to do, what we want to say, and be who we want to be. It's an amazing opportunity that we cannot take for granted.
Yep.
Tommy?
Well, I think my heart is always out west, and going to these different national parks I've been to. I've traveled extensively out west, and to me, that's some of the cornerstone of this country, and what the beauty of the when you think of the song "America the Beautiful," and they talk about the Purple Mountains majesty and all that. It's so true, and you talk about the American dream, and I feel like sitting here today. I'm turning 57 years old tomorrow, and I'm realizing the dream of the forefathers who built, with Abraham Lincoln and then building the Transcontinental Railroad out west. And, having, my wife and I were out there in 2019 when they had the 150th anniversary celebration of that. And just to now be a part of that fabric, I just feel like I'm part of that American dream. And I just feel so lucky and honored. I just love this country. I love being a part of it.
So on our worst day, we've said this before, and on our worst day, we are living somebody else in the world's dream. And it's not because we're anything special. It's because we live in America.
That's right.
We don't have to worry about, you got dads, and all of us have daughters, but you have dads in the world right now that are going to wake up in the morning and pray that their daughter does not get raped in front of them by some savages. Think about that.
Yep.
And we don't have to worry about they're not less of a man than we are.
Just he wants
to kill them too. He wants to kill them just like we want. He can't. And it's because we live in America is why we get to be the men that we want to be and can be simply because we live in America. How is that, man?
USA.
So raise our glass to America, and let's raise our glass to Tommy Wells making it to 57. We never thought you'd make it to 57.
I never thought I would either. Here's to that.
I figured you'd find the end of the tracks before then.
And once again, congratulations on becoming full-time your childhood
engineer,
dream,
baby.
And hey, look, 57 years old, you reached your dream. You're never too old, man.
Never too old.
I hope somebody hears out there that's like, man, I wish I'd have done this. Well, Tommy Wells, at 11 years old, this was his dream, and he at 57, he's there.
Yeah,
fucking do it, man.
Just do it.
Well, you would not have appreciated it if you got it at 21.
You're right.
No, not like you do now. No, you're right.
You're absolutely right.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. So until next week, McGee, Collins, and Wells are out. Happy 4th to everybody.